Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 58 of Mythos Busters. I'm one of your hosts, I'm Sean. Joining me tonight are my pals. It's been such a long time, guys. I'm so excited to actually be sitting down to record tonight. Let's start with Scott. Hi Scott, how are you?
Hello. I am well. I'm also excited to record. It's been a while.
And freshly empty, correct?
Yes, I am devoid of uncomfortable liquids.
Okay, you made it weird.
Just trying to think of a witty way to say I just
Is there
went
such
to the
thing as a
washroom.
comfortable liquid?
Swimming pools?
I think we hit show title early today.
And of course, that's Nick. Hi, Nick.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well.
Good.
Still emotionally recovering from Endgame, but I'm sure we'll talk about that in a couple weeks.
We should do like the Marvel Cinematic Universe wrap-up Mythos Extra, right?
I'm fine for
I'm
that.
down
yeah.
for that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Mythos Extra number 5 that we're never gonna do. And joining tonight, of course, is Ian. Hi, Ian.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm on the other side of a birth.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't think...
And
last
you look
episode...
great.
On the other side of a bird.
Yeah, there's been a new addition to my family. There's a newborn in that.
Well, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank
yeah.
you.
And we'll also know why you might sound a little bit like you've lost your will to live.
Sure. And if I have to duck out at certain moments over the next few episodes, then yeah.
Excellent. Well, guys, we've got a fun episode tonight, a meaty episode, and we're keeping the bread thin. So a lot happened in a short span of time while we decided to take a one-period hiatus from recording. So tonight we're going to talk about the new FAQ that dropped and all of the implications that go with it. And then tonight we're finally going to tackle the Circle Undone box, the player cards, the scenarios, and the campaign. And then we'll see. We might wrap it up with Tentacle Time, but I have a feeling we're going to go long here.
In typical
It's
Mythos
been-
Buster
yeah.
style. Like,
We'll keep
It's
it high
been
and tight.
foretold.
3 hours.
It's always the ones where we say it, too.
Right.
So this one's going to be super long, and we're prepared for it, so strap in. Missed you guys, too. Ian, what's
Yes.
going on with Patreon?
Okay. Well, I might be a bit rusty. First off, thanks to everyone who supports us on Patreon. First, thanks to all of our board members, our 9 board members. The 3 Chris's, Chris B, Chris H, and Chris U. Cyclos, Alex, Ian, Kyle, Philip, and Dave. Thanks, guys, for the big support you give us. Special shout out to a random patron this time around is to Chris Watt. Thanks, Chris. We do have a couple of folks who need some new job titles, but we're still marinating on those and making sure you get some good ones, clearing all the paperwork with HR, all that good stuff. And I think there's not too much. The final thing is just our Gen Con reminder each time, so you don't forget that we are having our own Mythos Busters event Saturday at 1 p.m., which has been confirmed. I mean, it's basically confirmed, pending them taking it away from us. But we still don't have location and all that. But I believe tickets go on sale May something next month. So just make sure you sign up for our event. We're going to have some fantastic swag, so don't miss it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Swag is underway. I mean, I feel like we've really, really buried the fact that we've been working on swag for 6 months now?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and it's been a considerable level of effort, so I hope people enjoy it. But yeah, definitely.
I am just so excited for our event this year, just specifically because of the swag. You guys are going to love it.
And beyond our own Mythos Busters event, we also always end Gen Con on Saturday night at the Slippery Noodle with After Dark, which is a chance for everyone to kind of unwind after the long convention, cut loose, play like kind of more party style games together, drink, whatever. It's basically the best way to end Gen Con.
Carouse and make merriment.
Yep. So,
Yep.
And there's usually some kind of, there'll be some kind of Mythos themed drinks again, I'm sure. So, join us.
Undoubtedly, we'll be renaming the same 5 beers with different Arkham-themed names. All
And
right.
you too could also get physically injured, like Brandon that one year playing Cobra Paw.
Yeah, it wasn't Brandon,
No,
that was Matt.
He was the
Oh,
he was the
Matt.
injurer.
Yeah,
Oh,
Matt
okay.
Holland.
Didn't you have to ask the server for ice?
Who is now the and Matt Holland's now the actual community manager of FFG, so saw that promotion happen. I'm excited to see those whatever changes come out of that. Matt's a good guy. Anyway, join us for Gen Con. So moving on from there, maybe just a little bit of content catch up. Scott, I don't know if this will come as a surprise to you because it feels like we did start it a while ago, but we have not recorded since we started our TFA run. Did you know that?
Have we really?
Truly.
Oh wow. Well, we're 3 scenarios in, and we're doing well.
We sure are, yeah. So as part of Tuesday Night Arkham, unfortunately I've had some scheduling craziness happen with Brandon, my friend who I had the Dunwich Legacy campaign ongoing with. So that's on a bit of a pause. So Scott and I started up our own Forgotten Age campaign where we're specifically going for the secret ending and forging our own paths. And man, we've had some frickin' games in that campaign.
Oh, our
Threads of
Threads
Fate?
of Fate game. Oh my goodness, that my heart was pounding for like half an hour after that game. Like it was just the things we had to pull off. I don't want to spoil it because it is so good. You need to go watch this one. I'll spoil the other ones for you, but that game was so good. It's worth sitting down to watch it.
My heart rate's gone up just thinking about that game.
Yeah, it possibly one of the best games of Arkham I've ever played.
Same.
Wow.
It was great. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of interesting decisions, a lot of things that happened where
You're really selling it, man.
I may have lost my composure a couple times.
well, I mean that happens when you see something red often. So, and we are using the thing to if you pull a red token.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. We are also, because we're doing Forge Your Own Path, it's generally considered, and I would strongly agree, that it's the most difficult way to go through TFA. Which, I mean, I don't know why we're doing this to ourselves, because TFA is already difficult as it is. But we are bringing power decks, so we're not playing like, oh, check out this cool, neat build. It's like, okay, what's the best Ursula deck I can build? And I'm doing that.
So power decks as in you both have Key of Ease, you both have Dr. Milan, you both have Machete.
Well,
right?
No machetes.
Aw.
I do have Dr. Milan because, I mean,
Because why not?
he's the good doctor.
Right.
Yeah. But also, I have 2 Unearth the Ancients. And Sean can attest. Sean, how much work did they do? Did they do a lot of work?
I already don't believe Sean, so this isn't helping your case.
I was pleasantly surprised that it worked as intended.
Ringing endorsement.
But it did work as intended. Like, it did what
Yeah.
exactly you want it to do. So, I mean, I don't know that I can give a better ringing endorsement.
Nick, for you, I will keep them in the entire campaign.
Perfect.
Okay. Great. Anyways, yeah. Tuesday Night Arkham, or when we don't do it on Tuesdays, it's This Day Night Arkham. So,
No, just call it Tuesday Night Arkham no matter what.
Well, but sometimes it's not on Tuesday.
That's
Actually, we did. I think we
That's
did
the
a
joke.
Thursday, and we. Oh, well, yeah, I know.
So anyway, if it's been a while since you've checked out our YouTube channel, it's been a long while since we've really had Well, actually, that's not true. It's been a long while since we've had like a consistent glut of playthroughs. Honestly, though, guys, what excites me most, like the newest invigoration for me, is Tabletop Simulator.
Oh,
Just the move to that from both a player standpoint and from a content producer standpoint, it is so nice, and it's easier to watch and see what the hell's going on. So if you haven't checked it out in a while, go ahead and check out our Threads of Fate game at least. You'll get a kick out of how many times I lose my shit.
What's the name of that mod again?
the Super Complete Edition. And the guy just updated it, so it's completely updated, has all the packs in now. And on top of that, it has about 40 custom scenarios, including the Winds of Winter that you have done, Nick.
Really?
And Ian's
Stranger Things?
your Stranger Things.
Oh, that's awesome.
And for all the regular scenarios and the return tos and everything, it now has a button where you click it and it sets up the board for you.
Oh my god.
Like the encounter deck, the tokens, the locations, like everything.
That's insane.
Yeah.
You get that. I wonder if I can launch Steam and not crash everything else going on my computer.
That was like the last hitch where I was like, I just said a few days ago, like, oh, the one thing it doesn't have the Octagon has is like the quick auto setup, and then lo and behold, there it is.
It heard you.
Yeah. And the deck builder too. You literally take the number at the end of your deck on Arkham DB and you put it in this little thing and click build deck.
Oh.
And if you have random basic weakness in your deck, like from Arkham DB, it puts a random basic weakness in there. Like it is the Cadillac of mods. It's amazing.
Yeah, because for a long time too, I was like, I don't want to do Tabletop Simulator because it's like a pain to build the deck manually and drag stuff everywhere. But yeah, that's like 10 seconds worth of work.
Yeah, it's an incredible mod. It's if you want to play Arkham Online, accept no substitutes.
It's a thing. Anyway, check that out. Ian, I know you were real close to finishing your Carolyn Carcosa run before Le Baby came.
Yeah. Well,
any updates there?
It was a combination of
or just so people know what to expect, I guess.
Yeah, it was a combination of the baby arrival, but also struggling with YouTube. Like I have Black Stars Rise recorded on Twitch, and I've been trying to export it for like 3 weeks now, and YouTube is just not like letting it go through. So trying to figure out what to do. I believe the highlight version is still on Twitch, so if people want to go watch it on Twitch, please do so before it vanishes. And I have the video downloaded, so I'm going to try to figure out some way to get it on YouTube eventually. So sorry for everyone who's been wanting to see the continuation. It's been played and recorded like 3 or 4 weeks ago, but I've just been struggling with technical issues trying to get it onto YouTube.
Yeah, it's a bit of a thing. And the fact that it's like an ongoing problem that both Twitch and YouTube know about, but no one can be bothered to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
It is just frustrating.
Yeah, big time.
All right, cool. Well, guys, let's hop into the meat of it then. Unless I'm not missing anything else, right?
No, we're skipping everything we don't have to skip this episode.
Okay,
So.
perfect. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't barreling through. All right, so our main topic tonight, I'm not even sure if we decided who was going to take the lead on this one, but Scott, since you're kind of our FAQ rules guy,
Hello.
Why don't you help us discuss this bomb that was dropped upon us?
Well, Matt Newman, in his infinite wisdom, which I think he actually does have, decided to kind of... This is something that I think a lot of competitive players would be familiar with in competitive card games. Is he basically made kind of like a restricted / banned list, but made it really Arkham-y. And so basically there's 3 different ways he is going to balance cards in the future as far as after they've been printed or they're out. Like a lot of core set cards got hit in this one. Is just like, hey, if you want to try playing a different way, we've identified that these cards are maybe a bit higher on the power curve, so still play with them, but we're just going to tweak them a bit, and it's a completely optional thing. Of course, Arkham is a cooperative game, so it's not like there's a competitive scene where you'd have certain rules you have to play by. But in this FAQ, there's 3 categories. So they have limited, which they increase the XP cost of the card. However, they don't change the level of the card, which is a key difference. They have mutated, which is basically an errata that's not a hard and fast errata. Like, again, these rules are all optional. Matt does say if you're going to use one of them, you have to use all of them. That's the idea behind it. So the ability text has been altered slightly on this card. And then the third one is forbidden. So those would be like banned cards in this quote-unquote competitive like list. There's nothing banned currently, but I think that's just future-proofing. Because I'm sure one day there's going to be a card that's like probably something from Dunwich that new stuff comes out and then we're like, find some weird combo and like
that old chestnut.
Yeah. That one right there. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. Like if you come from a competitive card game stance, the idea of restricting and stuff like that, this is super familiar.
So, did we want to run through kind of what actually got changed if you're going to respect the taboo list?
Yeah. So first one, Machete. Machete got given... by the way, these are the limited cards, so they basically have an increased XP cost. So I'll kind of give the example with Machete, and then we can talk about the other ones. So Machete is still a level 0 card, but it costs 2 XP to put into your deck. So this now means that you can't start with Machete. What are your thoughts?
This one,
Nick?
Machete's good. Like it is. Mm-hmm. But we joke a lot about, because it also feels like it's kind of the weapon that is a little overrated. Mm-hmm. So I'm surprised to see this one get 2 experience added to it. I'm surprised that, because to me, this is a great level 0 card that I eventually, upgrade out of if I'm running Guardian. I think where this is coming from, I'm guessing, I haven't talked to Matt about this at all, but I'm guessing that this is because if you have access to level 0 Guardian and you're making solo or even a 2-player deck, like everybody uses Machete, because especially in solo, like I was talking with Scott before we started recording, like this seems like an auto include, and I think that that's primarily what he's going for with the limited, is to kind of hit the auto includes, and to make it more of a choice as to whether or not you're including them. Whereas with, again, Machete and level 0, anybody with Guardian, that's not really a choice. Like, you do it. So
yeah, we like Nick mentioned, we talk about Machete a lot on the show, and it's a card I think is personally people overrate and think too highly of. Like, I think it has the natural balance is the fact that you can only deal the extra damage if it's the only enemy engaged, and it has to be engaged with you. And again, it's a product of, I think, most players probably being solo focused, I think is safe to say. And of course, yeah, in solo it's definitely powerful. And so I think what it does do, like that choice that you're talking about, Nick, is suddenly when you're building a deck, as your level 0 deck, you're not going to be able to use Machete, and it's like, okay, 45 and what? Like, suddenly these other cards, like 32 Colt, probably not Blackjack still, but some of these other level 0 Guardian weapons suddenly might get a look when they never would before. So, that's probably the intention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or you might also dip into your off class if it has access to weapons.
Like Fire Axe. Which I'm surprised actually did not make this list.
Fire Axe is fine.
Fire Axe requires a bit more of a specific build, whereas Machete just requires one monster.
An engaged enemy?
Yeah. It requires that you're playing Arkham Horror, the card game.
Yeah.
There's also not many other survivor options. It's like, okay, baseball bat.
Yeah.
So knocked out 50% of the survivor weapon base.
Yeah. Oh no, there's Meat Cleaver now. I keep forgetting about Meat Cleaver.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, 33% of the survivor weapon base. Yeah, I agree with a lot of this. I think Machete totally is overrated, because I'm not saying it's like it is a good card. It's a solid card, but I think the community overrates it because so many people play at 1 or 2 players, and that's where it shines. When you get into a 4-player game, it's not always as good as when you're playing in smaller groups. So I can kind of see this. Yeah, I'm okay with this one. Next one is Elusive. It also got 2 XP added on. Elusive is just a really strong card.
It is.
If you have rogue access, this is another, like, you just windmill slam it into your deck, 2 copies, and then you figure out the other 28 cards, right?
So imagine a world where Elusive was never released in the core set, and a level 2 Elusive with its same text got released today. We'd all be ecstatic. So yeah, I like the change.
I think so.
Yeah.
This one I wasn't surprised to see on the list because I'm never going to forget when Arkham released that first Arkham Knights, and we were talking with Matt about it, and someone at our table played Elusive, and he saw it, and he's like, "Oh, best card in the core box right there," and it made me like look at that card again and be like, "Is it?" And I'm like, but Shotgun is Shotgun. But Elusive is so good. Like 2 resources, no action, get rid of everybody, and go anywhere on the map that's open. And so I'm not surprised to see this on the list at all, especially because at the start of the game, Matt was like, that's the best card. So...
Yeah, this one hurts my soul a little bit, but
Yeah.
I think level 2 is totally fair. Like, the fact that I see level 2 and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll still totally pay for that to include in my deck. It's a sign that probably should have been level 2 in the first place, but yeah.
Now, it should be noted that I know you mentioned this earlier, Scott, but it's something that I have to keep reminding myself is that these can still be included in investigators who can take level 0 Rogue or level 0 Guardian. It's just that they have to spend the experience to take them.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And there is a question too, because Matt and I were chatting, and someone asked about, oh goodness, what's it called?
Adaptable.
And so it's still a level 0 card, but are you switching it out? And so Matt's kind of hemming and hawing on how he's going to approach that. Because, like, I personally, I think, if you're going by this, you kind of play by the... I think the spirit is... Like, you buy Adaptable, now you can't pay 0 for Elusive.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that seems cheesy to me. I feel like if something's on the limited list, you can't use Adaptable on it.
Exactly. I would agree.
Yeah.
A card I did not...
Switchblade level 2 got a hit.
Yeah. Like, I am surprised at this one. It got an extra XP, so it costs 3 to upgrade into. It's like Switchblade level 2 is a decent card.
It's fine.
It's
no Lupara, but it's fine.
And I was going to mention this when we were talking about Machete, but it just kind of seems like low-level, uses-less damage got a hit.
Sure.
Excepting Knuckle Dusters, which already has a pretty decent drawback.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, anyone who wants it will probably still take it at 3. I mean, though at 3, you probably just take Lupara.
I don't even remember
this is fast.
What the upgrade to Switchblade does. What does it do?
It's fast. You get +2 attack for this attack. If you succeed by 2 or more, it deals +1
Oh, so
damage.
it gives you +2 attack. That's what you get out of the...
Yes,
okay.
that's what it is, yeah.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. here's the big bomb one.
Oh my god. We can talk about these next 2 together.
Yeah. What? Oh, I don't even know. I think there's one that's far above the other. And like as soon as I saw, like, I read the intro paragraph of we're gonna add some extra XP or whatever to these cards, I'm like, higher ed is getting hit so hard. And now higher ed costs 8 experience.
Yeah, that's insane.
And Streetwise got the same thing. I think Streetwise is good, but I still think higher ed is, of all the permanent talents, like higher ed is just head and shoulders above.
Do you play a rogue deck that you don't take Streetwise?
Yeah, I'm gonna argue that I think the errata on Streetwise is actually more impactful than the one on higher ed.
You're crazy.
That's
crazy,
I would
Tom.
agree because I don't always take higher ed.
too.
I don't always take higher ed, but I always take Streetwise.
Oh,
Higher Ed's a really good card, but there's literally no rogue that doesn't immediately take
Yeah.
Streetwise with their first
Yeah.
3 XP.
Scott,
but
are
that's
you
because
taking
rogues are bad.
Scott?
Right? They need
Okay, all right.
Streetwise.
Let's
Right, exactly. That's why it's a bigger impact. Not saying it's necessarily a better card, but to the investigators, it will affect.
Scott, are you taking Higher Ed in Ursula in TFA?
Yes.
You are. Okay.
Yes.
Well, with Milan, yeah.
yeah.
Sure.
I-
I guess I didn't
like,
in my Ursula build, but I also went with Ellie. I wasn't going superpower. I was like, I'm going to go all relics. But anyway,
Like, I think Streetwise is good. Don't get me wrong. I think it is the second best permanent one. But I think Higher Ed still edges it out for power level.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing for me. For me, Higher Ed is a more powerful card, but Streetwise
Yeah.
does more for rogues than Higher Ed does for seekers. I guess
Agreed.
is my argument.
That's the thing, is Higher Ed is a win more card for the already best class in the
Right.
game.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Whereas Streetwise is like, oh my god, this is such a good crutch for
Yes.
a level
Yeah.
0 rogue who has a rough time.
Because I remember playing rogues before Streetwise came out,
Oh,
and
man.
when Streetwise came out, it's like
Yeah.
angelic choirs, night and day, like change
You
to the world.
you could finally keep up to other classes.
Jesus.
I'll let you get away with that one because it's supporting my arguments.
What I'm saying is, I think Streetwise could have, because Streetwise is, and I agree, it's essential to a lot of rogues. Like it puts rogues on the map essentially, and gets them up and going. Because they need it so much, I almost feel like he could have done 3 or 4 XP in it. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's getting hurt in the crossfire that is pointed at Higher Ed.
It's proof that Rogue is Matt's least favorite class.
I knew it. I think it could have been a little. I mean, they're definitely the two most powerful permanents. I think again, what it's gonna do. We'll probably talk later about how much we're gonna follow these. But for me, if I do follow this, then I'm gonna have to do some thinking to figure out how to build my rogues and evaded characters in kind of a post Streetwise world. Like, of course, I can buy it, but 8 XP and also in a class that's super XP hungry. Like, if you buy Streetwise, that's a lot of other stuff in Rogue that you're not going to be able to buy now.
Yeah, that's like 2 scenarios, maybe 3 scenarios worth of experience. This is no longer an early buy, you know what I mean? This is normally like purchase 1 for a lot of rogues, and now it's going to be like scenario 3 or 4 is when you're like, am I going to get this? Did I save up for this? So, oof.
And can we talk about, for a quick second, because it's only going to be a quick second, the fact that Scrapper is even included on this list?
What?
Ouch.
I was really confused at this one. Yeah, that one surprised
forget
me.
what it buffs. Combat and agility. Okay.
Yeah, I had to check. Like, I was like, Scrapper, that's the Survivor one, right?
Yeah.
It's
Like, I've taken it late campaign when I literally have nothing else to buy, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like... So, Kenai, so if we're assuming that just like the permanent skill boosters were too powerful as a group, Kenai was left off, and Bloodpack was left off. I think Bloodpack definitely is fine because it just has such a high, weird cost.
Kenai is off because Guardians, again, struggle with resource generation. And a lot of their big assets cost a lot of resources, the more integral tools to their decks. So I don't buy Kenai for every Guardian. In fact, I buy it a lot less frequently now than I did, back when it came out in Dunwich. So,
And honestly, I would have put both of those at about the same level of usefulness as Scrapper.
agreed.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Higher Ed, just because I'm not sure if we were clear on it. Higher Ed and Streetwise got 5 XP added each. Scrapper got 2. So Scrapper now costs 5. Higher Ed and Streetwise cost 8.
Yeah, it's insane.
8.
And I don't want to minimize the change to Higher Ed because it's something people have been talking about forever.
Right.
Like, it is significant change to Seeker and how they're going to go about things, for sure.
Well, there is like this kind of Seeker holy trinity of good cards and they all come up in here, spoiler alert, Higher Ed, Milan, and Rex Murphy, right? Like, those 3 cards together, when you get that set up, which is pretty easy to do, it's just bonkers. Like, I understand that combo exists, and we'll talk about what we feel about this list and using it and stuff, but I mean, yeah, that's where Higher Ed shines, right? With Milan, basically, and Higher Ed together. You're +2 forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the last one on the list. Now, as far as the ones that just got limited with their increased cost, personally, I'm a fan for the most part. I think the intent here is to encourage exploration and more deck diversity, which I will always get behind. So if we're like trying to future-proof here, and we want there to be space for future skill boosters, assets that boost skills, I do think the permanents really needed to be cut back, because the fact that you can just spend 3 XP and start with one of the best skill boosters in the game in play, or the best, depending on who you're talking to, obviously. Yeah, I like what's being done here, and I like the direction that leaves for future design space.
So here's kind of a side discussion related to the whole skill boosting and all that. I have not been interested at all in playing any of the level 1 composure skill boosters. But Ian, with Streetwise taking a 5 experience hit, does Moxie suddenly look more interesting?
I think so. Yeah, I think something like that is beyond, because before it's just been kind of a willpower boost when you really need it, but I think I'll definitely probably look for it as kind of a stepping stone to Streetwise, or like a placeholder until I can get to Streetwise.
Right. I guess the
God,
biggest
especially in Preston. Poor Preston. Oh,
yeah.
That Streetwise hit hurts him worse.
he needed a nerf though, guys. Preston needed a... No, I'm kidding.
Look at those stats!
Yeah.
I think what the big thing with Rogue is, what are they going to use in the Rogue class to boost intellect?
Yeah, that's the biggest hit.
Because they don't have anything.
Like, it's...
Moxie.
Eric, no.
Punky.
Rogue?
But I mean, like in the Rogue class, right?
Yeah.
The Survivor.
There's Lola, but this also gives Matt more room to explore intellect boost, or like other ways to get clues for Rogue that are more interesting than just spend 2, get 3. You know what I mean? Like this, like suddenly we have Intel Report. Lola Santiago is great. Lockpicks. Desperate Search doesn't count, Eric, because that's neutral. But yeah.
So related to that, Lola Santiago was already great, but in the power vacuum left by both Milan and Streetwise getting a nerf, like oh man, she's gonna become the new staple. So
yes,
yeah,
but she's 3 XP, you know.
And I should clarify too, because people are yelling at me in the chat. What I mean by boost intellect, I meant like paying resources for intellect, right? Like Lola Santiago, amazing. Lockpicks, amazing. I was thinking like pay 1 resource, boost this stat.
I literally thought you meant just help them get clues.
Yeah, no, it was more like the paying ones, but because I mean Lola, that's amazing,
right?
Lockpicks, amazing, yeah. So moving on to the mutated section, and these are cards that basically it's an errata.
It's a soft errata.
Yeah, it's an optional errata. Again, first card on the list, Dr. Milan Christopher.
DMC.
Essentially, his card ability now reads, after you successfully investigate, exhaust Dr. Christopher Milan to gain a resource. So it's basically a limit once per turn, unless you play him in Ashcan and discard a card to beat him. Is it leadership? What's the
inspiring presence?
Yeah. So essentially, Milan's limited to 1 resource a turn.
Yeah.
Still keeps the stat boost though. Yeah.
Yeah, which is still super playable.
Yep.
He's just
still
brought in.
good.
He's brought in line. He's still better than Luxley.
He's looped back into the top fourth of the power curve. Boo hoo.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen some discussion where people were like suddenly souring on DMC because of this, but I just don't see it. Like, because again, if you see it from this just straight like paying for himself metric, like of course it's going to take longer to pay for himself, but you're still getting the intellect boost, which happens to be important for seekers. He's still giving you sanity soak if you need it, and eventually, like most Arkham games are going to go much longer than 4 rounds or whatever.
You'll probably discover 4 clues.
Yeah. Likely.
He's still the same old Dr. Milan, which is he's paying you to do something you're doing anyway, so.
And he's helping you do it. Like, he's giving you money to do the thing he's helping you with. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
He's still really good.
Yep.
Just not as much. He lost his inheritance, so he's having to be a little stingy.
Yeah.
He's got a stipend.
And you know what? I understand what Matt is trying to do with this, and like you said, Sean, trying to change the way people are building, and this honestly makes me think like, okay, maybe I start looking at other Seeker allies, right? Like there's some
and
really
Mr.
good
Rook
Seeker
just
allies.
dropped, so like,
Yeah.
it's a new age, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Or
very
Charles Ross.
good. Yes.
Well, let's not get carried away.
So, and again, on this list, that Holy Trinity,
Here we go.
Rex Murphy. This card's ability gains limit once per round, so his
Shucks.
grabs 6 clues a turn is now 4. I don't mind this at
No.
standard. I think it seems like an appropriate change. Playing on hard and expert, honestly, like Rex rarely fired more than once. Like if he fired twice in a round on hard or expert, I was like, oh sweet, look at all the action compression I'm getting, right? Like I was just once per round is all I was expecting. So this kind of brings them in line to that at standard. And Jeff says in the chat, more like wrecked Murphy.
Okay, but for real though, if we like peek into the alternate universe where he was printed that way, like this is in line with the power level of other investigators.
Yeah.
If you fulfill this pretty attainable circumstance, he gets a free action every round for something specific.
Right.
Like Roland, right?
Yeah. Is Roland once per round? I always get this.
Yes.
He is once per round. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, this exact kind of errata is something we've said on the show before and others, so not just us, but just in general, it's been the most logical thing to do with him. Because it's almost as if, like, he was missing that printed. I know he probably wasn't, but that's just how it feels, because that's what it takes to make him kind of actually sane. It's just a comparison thing. Of course, when you compare it to what he used to be, it's gonna seem so like it's gonna pale so much in comparison. But yeah, the thing is, he was always a little vanilla. The fact he's just getting more clues. The thing was, he was just so crazy about it and just getting all the clues. But now he can still, you're basically getting like a free deduction per round, basically. But maybe the other seekers, the other seekers will seem more interesting in comparison, I think.
Well, I think so too, because as much as we love the Dunwich deck building abilities, Rex has the worst, I think, because he still has that fortune traded limitation. And man, like it just feels. I feel like Rex does one thing and he gets clues, and he isn't really good at anything else. And this curtails his clue getting ability. Like I felt like that was the reason you played Rex. Don't get me wrong, I am fine with this, but I think he's the weakest. Like he has the weakest deck building now of all the Dunwich Gators.
Well, I'm hoping
even more so.
I kind of agree with you. I agree with you that in that, like, comparing just straight deck building rules, he has the weakest, but you also have to consider that he can take almost any, I think any, Seeker card, which puts him at the head of the pack to begin with.
Yes, that's fair. Seeker's rule.
Well, but what I'm hoping is that what Rex becomes is like, yeah, he's got this cool little burst clue that he can get every turn, but just like figuring out what your splash is. And he's actually got pretty decent stats. Like if you ever needed willpower for something or agility for something, like you can work with a 3. Especially when you can splash from any faction. I'm hoping Rex becomes like the, hey, check out my fucked up Rex deck kind of investigator.
Yeah, I think what it does do instantly is I haven't played Rex since Dunwich, and now I probably will give it a try with this and see what kind of what kind of space there is to maneuver in there and do something interesting with him now.
And this also opens up design space too in the future. Jeff brought up in our chat. That he's fingerprint kit exists, and that's essentially Rex, but with a little bit of a limitation to it. And so
Rex was a fingerprint kit,
right? Well, yeah. So this opens up the design space in the future for other Seeker cards that allow you ways to get extra clues without just looking at them and going, "These are dead in Rex. I don't need these." You know what I mean? So,
see, I feel like even when we played like 4-player Rex, I still put deductions in. I would still put fingerprint kit in. I'm like, max all those clues. Like, move to a location, grab every clue in one action, move to the next location.
So absurd.
But yeah, this does open up movement for him, I think, or a change of perspective. Absolutely. Yep. This next one, I believe we have to apologize.
Yep, I was just going to say that.
For the Dunwich Iron Man year. Delve Too Deep. This card gains group limit 2 copies of Delve Too Deep in the victory display. Because that year at Arkham Knights, I think when we did that little core set campaign where we threw in the side quests, when we did Midnight Masks, we had 6 delves in the victory display.
Yep.
And Matt came over and he's like, "Oh my god." Just like shook his head and left. And we're just all cackling away at all the XP that we have. And, oh god. Yeah.
It's an entirely reasonable, as a Delve Too Deep proponent, I think it's an entirely reasonable restriction. Because if you're just kind of playing it as intended, you probably wouldn't even notice. But if you're going for the abuse, and the abuse is fun. I mean, I'll cop to that.
And when we were putting our decks together for that little run, we're like, hey, can we all run delves?
How many delves can we jam in?
I think we had 6 delves, and we also had Ken was playing Yorick, and he had buried them deep. So we had like 7 delves essentially.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was ridiculous. So I completely agree with this one. I like this one. It helps keep things even, because if you look at like Sharon's oboe, 2 XP per scenario makes sense to me for bonus.
Yep.
Yeah,
I agree. And the next few, I feel like aren't that game breaking. These are more just like, oh hey, this should have been here, right?
Well, not game breaking, but there's a couple of them that definitely changed.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at the last 2. Never mind. I take it all back. I take it all back.
Quick thinking. This card gains max 1 committed per skill test.
I didn't know that was a problem.
I think if you do that with double or nothing, and you have a couple quick thinkings, and you go all in on a certain skill test because, I don't know, maybe you have Streetwise and you're boosting something insane.
Exactly.
Like there's just...
I feel like this FAQ is just Matt rolling over the game with a lawnmower, and all the rogue tips just got nipped off. Like, hey, stop this Apex roguing here.
I feel some of these are like super functional to core game stuff, like Milan and Rex, and maybe Delve 2. Quick thinking, I think, is just okay, guys, everyone calm down, right?
All right, you broke it. Are you happy?
Yeah.
That's him throwing a bucket of cold water on us.
Like you play 4 rogue players, and they all bring 2 quick thinkings to the same skill test,
and then double nothing.
Like, yeah. Okay, everyone take 2 extra turns. So this one
I don't have a problem.
Makes
with
sense.
Yeah.
Ace in the Hole. This card gains max once per round. Sure.
Yeah. Again, was that a problem?
I don't think so. Was there any way to recur Ace in the Hole?
This was part of that infinite loop that someone figured out. Like once you get your deck down to like a small amount of cards, you can loop this and just gain infinite actions.
right.
So he just had to put the kibosh on that nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, I could see this one as an actual errata.
Yeah,
Sure.
100%.
The only thing it's going to stop is, for those of you who play Lord of the Rings, C-stand decks, where it removes the encounter deck from the game, or you gain infinite actions or whatever. So,
I feel like extra action cards in general are just going to find their way onto this taboo a lot over the course of the game.
yeah. They're the most dangerous ones, I think.
Yeah.
Further proving that the action is the most valuable currency that we have.
Yep.
That's worth about a resource.
With anything else? Shut up!
Sleight of hand. This one I'm a little bit sad to see because of Slightning Gun.
Oh man, the heady days of slightning in
Yeah.
a bar or a slightning gun or a shotgun. They were good days.
I love that in one of our other Discord channels, one of the users was like, "Well, but yeah, how can you quick draw a shotgun?" And I was feverishly searching for a GIF of Terminator pulling the shotgun out of the rose box in Terminator 2, but I couldn't find one. And I was like, "That's it right there!" Like you're just walking around with this big long box that maybe it has a lightning gun in it. I don't know.
Well, that's why all those rogues are walking around with big oblong boxes.
Yeah, oboes.
So, for those not in the know, it got changed to put an item asset that takes up fewer than 2 hand slots into play from your hand, which is a really weird way of...
one or none. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's sleight of hand, not sleight of hands.
right.
Well, if you have 2 copies, you should be able to play 2 copies and get a shotgun out
I agree.
for 2 copies.
I don't think anyone's going to stop you from house ruling that. You do you.
You know what? If you play 2 copies at once, I completely agree. Shotgun comes out. Last on this list, no one saw this coming. Key of Ys got the exceptional keyword. So 1 copy, and it is now 10 XP to put this glorious card in your deck.
Feels natural, I think.
Probably still worth it. Like, if you're just one
Probably
of those
still
decks
worth
where
it.
you're like, I would just like all my stats to be better.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
such a good card.
It's a fair change. I think the biggest thing it does is force players to really build their decks on trying to get it, like card fetching abilities, whether it's like Ellie or No Stone Unturned, stuff like that. You're really gonna, which I mean, to a certain extent, you did, because I think there are a lot of builds where you're probably only buying 1 anyway instead of 2 because it's kind of expensive, but even more so now because you're dropping so much on a single copy. You want to make sure you get it.
This card, they should have continued to mutate it and put a line of text in there that says, exceptional unless you're playing a neutral investigator.
Yeah, I know. Lola hated this
Because
didn't
she needed this. Not needed it, but, she needed it.
When an investigator needs the Key of Ys to be good,
Right.
maybe that investigator's just bad.
She is. It's not surprising anybody.
No.
I feel like this also may be my fault slightly because Iron Man Carcosa, when every time I had Key of Ys out, I'd show Matt, like, hey Matt, look, I'm playing Yorick, and I'm going to get rid of my Key of Ys, and I'm going to kill this guy, and I'm going to bring it back. How cool is that, Matt?
Watch. It was he was thinking about mutating Yorick to just having a blank text box, but then he said no.
Oh, I think he was there too when I was like going to take a test, and he's like, oh, your Key of Ys is empty. I'm like, yeah. Haster,
Yeah.
and then put 2 sanding on it and took my test.
I mean, yeah.
Oh, good times.
That card
So-
needed exceptional to begin with anyway. So
Yeah,
all's right with the world.
Final category is Forbidden, and these would be banned cards. There's nothing in this category currently.
Oh, look, Dr.
All right.
Milan and Key of Ys are in there anyway. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So,
Honestly, that I could see those 2
Right.
someday going
maybe,
in there.
possibly.
Yes.
So the real question then is, how do you guys feel about these adjustments? I'll go first. Mine's going to be pretty quick, because if anyone's been listening to anything I've said about card balance and faction design in this game, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I don't think we stressed enough at the beginning of this conversation that this is a completely optional list. If you don't like the changes here, you can completely ignore them, and you're not violating any rules of the game. No one should be able to say anything. Mm-hmm. But I think in general, it hit the cards that needed to be hit. It did them in a way that still, I think for most of them, I'm still going to look at them. It's just not going to be a foregone conclusion like it was in the past, which is kind of where you want it to be, right? Mm-hmm. The one thing that is missing from this whole thing that's going on here is a statement that says something to the effect of, the game will be developed with these in place to ensure more consistent encounter card design. So,
right.
I love this. Like I said, I love the approach they've taken here. My worry is that playtesting will still go on without them, and it won't matter, because you'll want to play with these other cards, and they'll just start to become too cute, because the scenarios are so hard that you just kind of need your power cards, because you need things to be consistent and quick. That's my worry.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't happen. What do you guys think about that?
I have a similar worry about the play. How is the design going to go forward with this? Mm-hmm. I like the idea of this list. Mm-hmm. So I have to say, though, I don't know how much I'm going to use it, because
same.
I find I just, if I'm going to develop a deck or play a deck that's different, like off the beaten path, I'm just going to do that myself personally. I like that this, for people who want to go off the beaten path and they're not sure how to go about that, this kind of gives them a really good guideline, right? Like, you can play by these rules, and here's some cards that are really good, and maybe try to build a deck without them. I still like having games where I build absolutely broken decks and try to go hard on something, right? Like our TFA campaign that we were talking about, where we're forging our own path. I'm like, that's the hardest way to play. Let's build good decks, right? Let's bring Dr. Milan and stuff like that. This is also coming to, I play a lot. Most of the games I play are on hard. It's right. Probably a good 80 to 90% of my play now is hard. And so I feel like these cards are a little bit more fair at that point. And if I ever play expert, all bets are off, I think.
Yeah, it's, for me, it's really I'm looking at the notes that were added here too, talking about how you address this. Will it affect personal play? What about playing in groups? For me personally, 90% of the time, I'm probably going to ignore it, simply because when it comes down to it, the cards, that's what I reference when I'm playing. I usually only get an hour or so to play at a time, and I'm not going to be able to remember this, especially when the list starts getting longer. It's not going to be, I'm not going to be wait, what was the change to Milan again? Or shoot, I added this card too early because it's more experience. I'm happy this list exists, though. When it comes to playing in groups, if I'm playing with my wife or my more casual play group, I'm probably not going to be oh, here's this list, consider this when you're building the deck. Or upgrading. But when we get together to play, Sean and I, it's probably going to be more of a thing then. Or whenever, maybe at Arkham Knights when we sit down to play, I'll probably, going into Arkham Knights, I'll probably build decks with the taboo list in mind, simply because then I'm playing with people who are more I don't want to say serious about the game, but who are more in tune with the how the game is changing over time. Whereas my wife isn't. She only knows what's going on with Arkham when I tell her, or when she draws it in her hand. You know what I mean? So it's really going to depend on who I'm playing with but I'm happy that this exists, and I like having this. I know I've toyed with in the past talking about doing achievement runs and going for the achievements that are in the return to boxes. And if I do those, I will be using the taboo list, because that would feel, it would feel disingenuous to not. So,
I am torn. Overall, I really like the approach they've taken, especially coming from Lord of the Rings, the card game. The approach has just been straight up errata, which kind of makes sense for the game, because there isn't a way to recost cards with XP. You could recost the actual cost, etc. Anyway, I don't want to go too much down that line, but basically, I like the fact that they took the optional approach with this game, and also kind of this multi-tiered approach with either adjusting the cost through XP or the mutations, the kind of errata. So I think that's very cool overall. Because I knew at some point something had to happen to cards like Higher Ed and Rex, but I thought it would just be a straight up errata. I like this approach better. I think right now I'm kind of leaning towards using it in my own personal play. It's funny, but I feel like most of my hesitation really centers around a single card, and that's Streetwise. Like, if that wasn't there and so expensive, I'd probably be like, oh yeah, I'm following it, of course.
I can hear your stomach making acid from here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that one card is really the thing that's making me torn. Otherwise, I'd be all on board, because I think I don't know, like, you can choose to ignore it or not, but for me, I like the ways it's going to kind of force me to explore some deck building, but man, I'm going to have to do some thinking about Streetwise.
Man, those Return to Dunwich reduced cost skill boosters are going to look a lot nicer too, aren't they?
They sure are.
I've already found myself using a couple of them, like Physical Training I think is the one I use the most.
Same here.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the real subject, though, and how this taboo list is completely destroying the spirit of the game, and like how it's undoing Arkham from the ground up, and how this
all right, calm down, Facebook.
This is ridiculous. You mean Facebook, Reddit? Yeah, it's...
Oh, really? They were I've been out of the world for a little bit.
I'm assuming. I honestly do not go to Reddit that often, so I have no idea. But yeah, I'm just surprised at the amount of backlash that this has gotten for it being something like it's saying here. It's just you handing them a switch, saying flip it if you want, and people are like, "Why is the switch here?" And it's like you don't know. You just I'm just putting it here. Like you just ignore it. Don't flip it.
One thing that I worry about this list is that it's going to cause, I don't know if it's a divide in the community, but I never want to see someone being shamed for not using it. Do you know what I mean?
Or for using it.
Or using it, yeah. I think
right,
you're more likely to find the other.
I think this is a personal decision. Even if you're playing in a group, I can totally see it as two people are like, yeah, I want to play with it. Two people are like, no, I don't. And okay, cool, do what you want to do with your own decks, right?
Yep.
Like that is totally cool to me.
Agree.
I don't ever want to see there be a big schism like, well, it's a good deck if you play without the taboos, like it's sissy. Like that attitude just can't happen.
Well, here's an interesting question that kind of bounces off of that then, is then if you're playing in a group and two people are using or let's say three people are using taboos and one isn't, do you think that one player is just going to kind of run away with the game? Like, is it going to get to a point where, you know what I mean?
Yes,
like
if Rex.
Yeah, if they're doing the Holy Trinity, they have Rex, they have Higher Ed, they have Dr. Milan, and maybe they have a Key of Ys, and everyone else is like, you know, you shouldn't like this. Is it going to ruin the fun of the other players? Like there's not an answer for it. I'm not looking for an answer. It's an interesting discussion that suddenly now exists. So
yeah, I think there's ways to handle that within a group. Like if you have a play group of 4 people,
like using your words.
Yeah, use your words like an adult. Yes, if someone is using the Holy Trinity plus Key of Ys, yeah, they're going to run away with the game. As far as clue getting goes, and that might ruin other people's fun. And then maybe they just have to say, "Hey, man, like if you want to play Rex, that's cool." And this kind of comes to me, my own thoughts on this, where I kind of already adjusted a few things. Like,
sure,
I stopped playing Rex because it was just I was done. Like I'd figured him out, and I'm like, okay, I know what Rex does. I know what his build is. Cool. And now I'm moving on, right? And maybe that's just a conversation like, hey, man, if you want to play and you want to play Rex, that's cool. But maybe don't also get Milan and Higher Ed and Key of Ys. And then, I don't know.
That Trinity became a quartet pretty quickly.
It sure did, yeah.
Barbershop Rex, that's what they're calling it.
Yeah,
well, I mean, one Trinity costs 3 XP and one costs 13, so the quartet costs 13.
Fair point.
Yeah, I guess it's really two different things, two different situations that might come up. Like if you're going to an event or some kind of situation where you're going to be playing Arkham and you know a certain group you're going to be playing with, it's easy to kind of set that up in advance. If you're planning out a deck, like, oh, I'm going to Arkham Knights, what decks am I going to bring? Because I might be playing with, who knows, just random people at certain points. That becomes a little different. Like, I think I'll probably be planning taboo kind of compliant decks for those situations, because it's harder to change them from like not being compliant to fitting taboo like on the spot than if there already are, then you don't have to change anything, even if you're playing with people who aren't following them.
Right.
I'm also thinking, like, when I go to Arkham Knights, like, I'll build taboo compliant decks, but I'll have my sideboard of cards that are for, like, oh, are we going to play on expert and try and smash this? Okay, one sec. Let me rework my deck so I'm not playing with taboos. You know what I mean? Like, bringing us a little sideboard of cards, like, again, if you're playing Rex Murphy, it'd be really easy to switch out a few cards and have the taboo build versus the non-taboo build.
Sure.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just echo that the only way this fails is if we let it cause drama. And it super doesn't need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just live and let live, right?
Yeah, because
Cool,
that's the thing about this game is, like, as it's developed, it's based around customizing your experience. Like, there's different difficulty modes for the bags. There's these ultimatums. You can play return or standard versions of the campaigns, and now there's these taboos. Like, there's so many of these little toggles that you can do. Like, there shouldn't be any kind of bad feeling about any particular toggles that you are or not switching on.
Remember when we talked about the difficulties going from standard to hard, and we suggested that one way to kind of make that jump less harsh is to use, like, the standard scenario card with a hard bag or the hard scenario card with the standard bag. I feel like if you're playing standard and you just want to up your difficulty just a little bit, play with the taboos.
Yeah.
Don't change anything else, right? Like, that, I think, will give enough of a little bit of a difficulty increase. And then maybe you also do taboos and the bag switching scenario card thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you slowly want to work your way up to hard, I think this is a really good way of doing it.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing Mystic, then it's literally the same game.
I was going to say, it really, that kind of hinges on if you were playing with these cards originally. Like, I mean, if you're someone who wasn't very clued into the meta, if you didn't follow what everybody else was doing, and were just kind of doing your own thing and exploring your own way through Arkham, and then you see this taboo list, and you're like, wait, what? Like, why? Like, why is Machete on there? I never use Machete. Why is higher education on there? I never use higher education. I don't think this was made to make these cards less effective. I just think it was to put them in fewer decks. So,
one thing, because we brought up Arkham Knights and stuff, and we kind of talked about this before the show, Iron Man event, and you know what, we've mentioned this before too, choose whatever difficulty you want. We are playing on standard. If you want to play on easy, that's cool. If you want to use taboos, that's cool. We won't be using taboos. I think we decided on it for Iron Man.
Oh, did
specifically?
I don't know. I'm playing Mystic.
I missed a lot of discussions. So,
but I mean, Iron Man isn't about the difficulty of the game. It's the sitting down and playing an entire campaign in one sitting and fighting the brain fatigue. Like, doing Iron Man on easy and not using the taboo list is just as headache-inducing. So,
who am I even? I'm playing Finn. Yeah, we're not using taboos.
Yeah, I would
Someone
that.
needs Streetwise.
I don't need it. I want it.
And I suppose it bears mentioning, some people might be wondering how we're going to proceed talking about... I even hesitate to call it two separate metas in the podcast here. Because it's not really separate metas. It's just a few cards. It's just a few archetypes. And then it's like all rogue decks.
Yeah.
But I think as you saw from our discussion here, we kind of have a pretty well-rounded collective view of what's going on. I'm personally going to be using the taboo list in my own games, and we'll be reporting from that perspective. Like everyone else, like if I'm sitting down with someone who doesn't play very often, not even going to care. Just play normal, whatever.
yeah.
Iron Man, sure. Like, gonna play with the taboos, but I reserve the right to like yoink them at the smallest reason to yoink them. And
Which for Sean, it doesn't take much.
no, it really doesn't. Just like one scenario is like fucking Rex.
And you reserve the right to play the game the way you want to.
Ah,
I don't
there
see
it
how
is.
that can
That's
ever be
not
an
in
issue,
the spirit of Arkham, though. God.
But the Grim rule.
The Grim rule, H.P. Lovecraft's Grim rule says.
Yeah, I think these are fun. I don't think there should be any shaming. If you want to use them, great. I'm going to use them sometimes. I won't use them the other times. It's just another way to play the game. Do what you want to enjoy.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the things that might change as far as like analyzing the podcast is might discuss things like, oh, like in a non-machete level 0 world, this weapon is probably better than it would be otherwise. That kind of thing. But
Right, yeah. Also
So we
note,
need to
sorry, quick.
Go
Total 13 cards, 6 of them rogue. Suck it, rogues.
Ouch.
further confirming that Matt hates me.
And rogues were the best class, apparently? Who knew that?
And I also think as a community, or maybe here as a podcast, if we can puzzle it out, we need to come up with a better term for like being taboo compliant versus non-taboo compliant. There's got to be something snappy that we can come up with.
Like safe word.
So, if you've got that wordsmithy mind, challenge on.
Is it tabooed?
I was just going to say, why not just add a D on the end?
Did you taboo your deck? Is it tabooed?
Okay.
it's
Okay.
terrible.
Hey, are you tabbing?
And is that's respecting the taboo? Are you tabbing?
Hey, bro,
tabbing,
want a
dude?
tab?
Dude, are we tabbing this?
Oh, man.
Oh, Jeff in the chat. I'm playing Taboo Roland. Or I'm playing Taboo Rex.
So no machete. That's it. Oh, and Milan, I guess.
Dan Milan, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's very usable.
I'm an
I'm
occasional
playing
Less
Taboo
flashy
Finn.
than I was hoping for.
I'm playing
I-
Taboo Finn.
I tab
Just
when
kidding,
I
I'm
feel
not
like
playing.
it, but I can stop anytime.
You even tab, bro.
Tab, bro.
All right, guys. Well, we'll round back on
So much
discussing
good
those.
material.
We'll round back on discussing those as the list develops, I'm sure. But for now, let's move on and talk about the Circle Undone box. Finally! Woo!
Hey.
So, spoiler alert for the Circle Undone. We're talking about the 2.5 scenarios in the box and spoiling everything. So go ahead and hit that old pause button if you don't want to hear it. So starting with player cards. Oh boy. So let's go class by class. Guardian. Any standouts in Guardian?
Carolyn.
Nope. Yeah. But that's not new. Yeah, I mean, Interrogate seems cool, but I haven't really had the opportunity to use it because the Guardians I've been playing have been Carolyn. But other than that, Delay the Inevitable's neat, but nothing amazing. Nothing like, it's not like we got another machete or anything, so.
Yeah.
I tried a handcuff Joe Diamond deck where my whole goal was to use Interrogate and scene of the crime and handcuff an enemy and drag him around and just try all these weird ways of getting clues.
Drag him around.
Yeah. Come on, perp.
Like Michonne in Walking Dead.
Yeah, and oh goodness, what's his name? Brian from The Right of Seeking. He published a deck called Lazy Joe Hates Investigating, and so he basically found a way how to put a deck together where you can get a total of 28 clues without actually investigating once.
Nice.
And so I was kind of running a variation of that. It didn't work all that great. It was
about to
super
say.
fun to play.
Does it actually function?
It functioned decently well, but it wasn't top tier. You know what I mean? But it was really fun though.
All right, so then moving on to Seeker. Fingerprint kit's pretty good, right?
Yeah. Mini Rex in a box.
Rex. First you cut the whole box. Then you put your Rex in the box.
You put your fingerprint in that box.
Curiosity's neat.
It is neat.
Yeah.
I want Connect the Dots to be more universe. Like that 4 cost that's rough.
I think
Yeah.
Connect the Dots is like a 4-player card that sits in your Seeker that you'll eventually upgrade to Deciphered Reality.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of where it is.
It's the 4 cost is rough, and then also requiring a lower printed shroud. Like it requires setup to it if you're not doing 4-player. 4-player you can like stumble into this requirement, but not really in 2 or 1 player. So
Doubly hard to do if you're hunching it because
oh yeah.
God knows it's never going to show up on the right
Oh
turn.
yeah. I don't think you ever put this in the hunch deck. As much as the two cost reduction is nice, this is just so timing specific. Yeah.
It's hard to set up. I will say in its favor, this is probably the best cycle for it. Like, there's a few scenarios I can think of where you're need to move quickly and you want to grab clues from, like, locations that are already revealed or...
Yeah.
Or that just aren't yours.
Yep. There's
Or you're like,
Yeah.
or you see a bad haunted effect and you're like, no, thank you. I'll go to another location.
Yeah.
Rogue.
Nick and I were talking before the cast about this, and I was saying that each class got a bunch of cool cards, and some of them fit with some gators, some without. But Rogue was specifically like, "Hi, Preston, you're here. Here's some tools. Take all the cards, the Rogue cards in this box.
You're playing Preston, include these 6 cards.
Yeah, because I mean they're all super resource based, right? Like,
Yeah.
boost your skills when you have a bunch of resources. Use your resources as skills. When you have more resources, this skill card gets better. Like it's just they're Preston.
It's
cards.
like Preston and Jenny, and that's it.
Yeah.
Which is welcome considering Preston needs, like, support to do his thing. But yeah, I do want to...
Especially Taboo Preston.
Yeah, there it is. Tabbin Preston. I do want to tinker with Jenny and these money cards because I haven't played that yet, but be interesting to see how that works out.
I think these cards are much better in like combination with each other. Like if you're playing a specific archetype of let's get lots of money and then use that to our advantage, versus just like, I don't know, like a mid-range rogue, like a Finn who's just running around. You know what I mean? Like you don't take one of these cards. They kind of come as a set, right? Like Nick said, here's these 6 cards.
Yeah.
And they're a good set, but they're a specific set.
Yeah. And maybe this is our first chance to talk about taboo, post-taboo world, but maybe in a kind of tabooed, streetwise world, something like this becomes more like Money Talks, for example. Like, you have a couple of those in there, you're not spending as much into streetwise, so presumably you have more resources, so maybe that helps you pass those intellect and agility tests without streetwise.
Yeah, God, I never thought about how much money's just going to sit around in a post-streetwise world.
I mean, all 3 of these cards actually help in a post-tab world. For investigating specifically, right? Because that's the big one.
Which one of these 3 do you think is the most universally viable for rogues?
I feel like well-connected.
And I was going to say Money Talks.
Yeah, I kind of think Money Talks... Like, because I could even see Money Talks throwing into a couple of your... couple copies in your low willpower investigator when you really need to pass that will test. You got that on tap.
Because the way I see it is that well-connected requires a minimum of 5, but really, like, 10 is kind of
probably
where you
10.
want that. Yeah. Whereas Money Talks, a minimum, for some investigators, it'd be like minimum of 6.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, outside of Preston, they're much more limited, so.
Yeah, for sure.
Mystic got some cool cards.
Nope, none of them. So Survivor.
Do you guys play around with Diana Existence at all?
Haven't we played with Deny Existence?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
You mean the
really
third and fourth copies of Ward of Protection, which is considered one of the best cards in the game? Yes, I have played with that card, Sean.
Freaking zero cost Deny Existence. How?
Oh my god.
How?
How did that one not get tabbed?
Yeah.
It's a paradox.
Because
It's now 5 experience.
it instead had got errata that it can ignore being put on the taboo list. It's one of the things that was, you choose one of those.
Boo.
Prophesy. Okay, so the moon, whatever. Prophesy is one that I was really unsure of. I think it's pretty okay. I think that's where I landed on it. Like, I think most of the time, particularly if you're running at least Arcane Initiate or David Renfield, most of the time this is at least Unexpected Courage. Very once in a while you'll catch it where it's not, and then sometimes it'll have a third icon.
So then why not just run Unexpected Courage? You know what I mean?
That's kind of my argument, too.
Yeah. Like, why rely on that condition to get to a card that already exists?
Oh, I was just asking if you guys played with it.
I haven't.
No.
6 Doom. It's so, that's a lot. Like, there are certain builds. Like, I think you can make this work, but this requires more work from you, and also that work is straight up dangerous. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's I think it's in the lower half of the skill suite that we got. Steadfast is the best one, right? Can we all agree there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Curiosity is really good too, though.
Is it though?
7 cards? That's not hard to do.
Well, but it has to be. You'd have to be at 8 cards and then commit this.
Yeah, you have to be at the
7.
max hand size in order for
I
this
think-
ever to get its third
How
icons.
often are you not, though? You know what I mean?
Pretty
like, how
often.
often are you not pushing 7 to 8?
Yeah, I
Pretty
don't
often
like
for
Curiosity.
me. I commit cards on the regular.
Maybe in a post-taboo world, though, since you won't have higher ed.
Yeah. No, but Steadfast is the best regardless.
Eldritch Inspiration, I think, is really cool. The way it's gonna change the way some cards work? Question mark.
I feel like right now it's like a one of, and occasionally you'll play it and like it. But I don't think there's not enough cards to warrant the benefit of running 2 of these
Yeah.
currently.
Also, this card has gotten an errata in the FAQ, which we totally didn't talk about. It clarified how it functions, but
That's
he
right.
rewrote the text. So it's like after anyone that's triggered when, if, or after you resolve, you draw a token or whatever. It makes it written. It clears it up so it works the way you think it should work.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Track Shoes faction
Track.
got
Yeah.
Track Shoes.
I was gonna say.
Track shoes.
Don't you mean the able-bodied faction?
I surely did not.
Ooh.
Yeah, Track Shoes is nuts. Act of Desperation. Here's a good discussion now that it's out and we can play with it. What are our thoughts on Act?
It's Mark and Yorick so far.
Yeah, I haven't tried it really outside of that. I think I put it because my wife played Rita for a game and I put it in that deck. But we never really got it to fire in a way that was particularly satisfying. So
I found the times I've put it in Mark and York, and I'm just like windmill slamming 2 copies in because the icons are great. It costs 0. It's economy. Like it fits everything.
It's like another bullet in your gun because you just chuck it.
Yeah, but other than that, I haven't put in any investigators. Like it's very specifically those 2.
I have it in my
I can see
Yorick.
maybe Zoe. Zoe might splash it.
sure. Well, Zoe's more.
Zoe's ability is economy, so maybe not.
Yeah, and she's more like she needs that investigation help. So Guardian has some tools for it, but you really want to grab them Seeker cards. Or Mystic.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
I was just mentioning I've been playing Act of Desperation in New York, and I haven't used it as much as I thought I would so far. But that's just been a product of circumstance, I think. Not having some of the scenarios, I've just been doing so much knife work that there hasn't been any opportunity to really use the Act of Desperation.
I also think this is one of those cards that, at least I noticed it in the situation that I described earlier with my wife and I, where you end up hanging on to it, waiting for that perfect firing, that perfect circumstance, and then you end up like blowing right by a number of opportunities that would have been useful, but because you wouldn't be hitting everything, you still hang on to it.
So it was too awesome to use?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I tried building a really weird Agnes deck with able-bodied. No, with able-bodied.
That is weird.
Okay.
And her weapon was meat cleaver, and that's the only item I had. And like it was specifically like she was a killer, and it was like shriveling and wither and meat cleaver and able-bodied.
How did it do?
It was really fun to play.
How did it perform?
It was okay.
Okay, that's about what I expected.
Yeah. But I just wanted to use able-bodied and also meat cleaver in Agnes.
Yeah,
So-
it's interesting because like Act of Desperation seems like it pairs with able-bodied, and it probably does, but at the same time it doesn't need to. Whereas able-bodied requires a specific sort of deck composition that I think if we see more support for that would be really cool.
I think able-bodied is one of the most restrictive of these
Yes.
skills. Like 2 or fewer item assets, and like
That's hard.
having only one single item out in order to get the full benefit. That's rough. Although I think Silas could do it. Like Fire Axe Go, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, and it's because we also have that card, what is it, On Your Own in Survivor that triggers when you don't have an ally. So that's interesting that I would love to see more cards like that for Survivor. What I would love to see is cards more like Able-Bodied where you can use them, but if you don't have an ally or you don't have items, they get better. Like, you know what I mean? To kind of facilitate. Because I think that's a really interesting archetype, and I want to see that expanded upon.
What about a cornered, on your own, able-bodied Dark Horse Survivor? So you don't have no friends, no items, no money, no cards.
No problems, yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
But all my stats are 9. Like, I don't know.
I love it. I want to do that. Who would be the best investigator for that?
Ooh.
Not Wendy. Probably Silas.
Yeah, probably
Because
Silas.
he can pull them skills. So he doesn't need items.
I think it'd be terrible, but it'd be really fun to be like, I'm testing at 14. 14 to 2. Let's see if this works.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. How do we feel about are we surprised or anything with the tarots? They pretty much worked exactly like I thought. So
Yeah.
I was gonna say there's a few I like more than others. I really like the 4 of Cups, or I don't have these memorized. I'm looking at a list, so it's easier. But the Mystic willpower boosting one in Safina.
Sure.
I think in general, like mystics in general, I think favor that more than the other classes like theirs.
The Survivor one in Calvin is just... It's one of... Yeah, it's a really early buy.
It's experience
Auto buy.
1 and 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't really used Guardian, although I could see it in if you're like a dedicated Mark kill deck, like you're playing a four-player game, and you're just like all the combat using Colts and stuff.
I've actually used it in Diana, a Diana build that actually used, her hands for weapons. And it's really good there. I've also used Death a little bit as kind of an alternative to Mag Glass if I want something else in the hands.
Right. I wouldn't mind Ace of Swords and someone like Skids, bump them up to 4 combat.
Yeah.
If it's like a fighty Skids.
I found that I like the tarots more than I expected to. Like when they were revealed, I was like, oh, that's cool. They're kind of boring stat boosts, but I've actually tried them out a bit and they're fine. Like, if you decide you want to go a different way with your ally and that's not your main stat boost and you still need one, that's a really easy thing to look at.
Yeah.
I need to play with them more. I have yet to include one in my deck, so I need to do that. But yeah, and again, the moon in a post taboo streetwise world, again, more value there.
Have you guys used the Ace of Rods much? The neutral gain in action one?
Yeah, but only because the game made me.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah.
Right, yes.
I haven't actually bought it out of choice yet,
Okay.
but it's been
found
useful.
I found it okay, but like underwhelming. I think I prefer any other of the tarots to the
really?
Ace of Rods. Yeah, because like Ace of Rods gives you a single action where you're +2, whereas the other tarots are like +1, like
Always.
8 to 10 times in a game.
Sure.
Yeah, right. Like there's gonna be. Do you want one unexpected courage, a single one, or do you want like a single stat boost for the entire game? I
it's
prefer
also-
the stat boost.
It's also a fourth action, and as we mentioned earlier, actions are the most important part. Or what did you say? The most valuable What I forget what you just said, Sean. But
It's the most valuable currency in the game.
valuable currency. There you go. So,
Yeah.
but no, I generally agree. I haven't been super hot on the tarots in general. Like I've enjoyed them, but I haven't been like, ooh, gotta get the Ace of Swords. Ooh, gotta get death. You know what I mean? Like, well, I never say gotta get death, but, yeah.
I think I like a couple of them a lot in specific. Like
Right.
the Survivor one in Calvin is absolutely amazing. Calvin needed it. If you're a mystic and you're using willpower, the Four of Cups is really good because willpower boosts.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I like them a lot.
I would like to see more tarots that have interesting effects similar to the Ace of Rods. Even if they don't get picked as often, just because I would rather have something that's a choice. And I realize I'm kind of going back because I think when these were spoiled, I was like, this was what I wanted, was just a pay experience, get a static stat boost. But now in practice, I'm like, it's kind of boring. I'd rather have a choice. You know what I mean? So I don't really know what I want. Surprise, surprise.
I think I might end up liking them more as kind of like off-glass grabs in the long run.
How many Arcana, is that what they're called? The different symbols, the different characters. How many are there left? How many are there total? Is it
13?
There's 20.
14 of them?
No, there's. Wait, you mean
Oh, no,
the
22.
tarot? There's
20
26, isn't there? I just looked this up. Hang on.
Because there's Major Arcana, there's a lot left.
There's a lot.
Oh yeah, there's major and minor. I forgot about that. Everything I know about that, it comes from playing the Persona series, so it's really loose in my head. But yeah, there's definitely interesting things to be done with that slot, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I wonder if we're gonna still get more stuff this campaign.
There's 78.
Okay,
Okay, so a
78.
little bit of room. Just a little bit of room.
22 major, 56 minor.
Okay,
And the minors
22
are divided into suits with 14 each. So
Okay.
Right.
I think the major are the ones that get referenced most often, but still 22's that's space. Okay, so let's bust into the scenarios then. So starting first with the disappearance at the Twilight Estate, something a little bit different than anything we've done in the game so far. This one is super interesting, I thought. You know what this one reminds me of?
what does it remind you of?
Do you guys ever get like Scry or any of the magazines? And I never even played Magic, but I still looked at these where they would set up like, hey, you have this in your hand, your opponent has this in play, like figure the puzzle out to win, that sort of thing. This is just kind of like an odd extension of that because your hand is fixed, your investigators, more or less planned for this puzzle. Really, the biggest variable is what you see off the encounter deck when.
Mm-hmm.
What's your guys' experience been with the prologue so far?
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I think, to be honest, the amount of times I've played it now, I don't want to say it's getting old, but the fact that you start like with the same puzzle every time, now it's starting to be like, I'm like, okay, let's just get this over with. But sure. I really still do enjoy it. I'm just, if I have to play it again, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess
Luckily,
I will.
it's pretty short.
Yeah, and that's very true. So
yeah, there's not a ton of variability to it, but I do like, and I could see it getting old over time, but I do like that sense of being this kind of underpowered version of an investigator and just figuring out how much you can scramble together. And there's been a few moves that I've pulled off that have been like kind of edge of your seat type, just trying to scramble like just one more turn. So that's kind of fun. But there's only a certain amount of moves you can do with each investigator that are kind of going to be successful. So in some ways, I think it's going to be solved over time in that way.
So, which of the preset investigators do you think is the best, and why is it Valentino?
I actually haven't played with Valentino yet.
Anyone?
I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to remind myself of their powers.
Jerome is also very solid.
I was going to say, I played with Gabriella and Jerome is definitely my favorite. So,
Yeah.
of those two.
Color me surprised.
I've enjoyed Jerome and Valentino. Those have been my favorite.
I didn't have a Mystic analog, so I actually had to jump ship for this one.
What? Penny?
Penny's super survivor.
Oh, she is. I just saw the 4-will.
Yeah.
I think Penny was my favorite play because it was just wild, like trying to dodge all these ghosts, and she kept getting cornered. And just this like housekeeper trying to survive. Yeah,
now,
I think
the chat is rising up against me a little bit here. I do love Gabriella. I would say is the most fun. She's just got the most going on. But Valentino got me through some tough times in a couple campaigns.
Gabriella was also my first one, and it didn't go so well, so I need to try that one again.
I feel like Valentino is the here, try what Preston would be like because of the cards you get in your hand.
Yeah.
Like, because you get the money talks and the yeah.
Do you guys have a certain logic for how you pick? Because I've generally tried to pick the people who I think are closest to the investigators I'm going to end up playing. Like, it doesn't matter, but that's just kind of my logic of how I picked them.
I'm hoping, and what drives my decisions so far, I'm hoping that at the end of the scenario, we're going to get whoever survives, whoever we can potentially rescue as an ally. So I'm guessing, based on what their investigator card does, maybe roughly their ally will do something similar and try to pair them with investigators that may or may not want that kind of effect. It's a little ropey, but I'm confident I'll be paid out in the end.
The way I pick is I actually reach across my desk and drop a D4 like this into my dice tower. And
that works.
Yep. Or whatever cards, I'm like, oh, I have these cards in my deck. Well, that's the easiest ones to take out and get set up to play the prologue.
Yeah. What funny thing is, I the first time I sat down to play TCU, I built my investigator deck first, and then I picked my neutral, and I was like, God damn it! Now I got to pull cards out of my investigator deck. And, come on! But no, it was after that I learned. I learned to read the campaign guide.
RTFC noob. RTF G. There it was.
But the prologue was just such an awesome what a cool way to start a campaign.
Yeah.
Yes, from a narrative
thematic
standpoint.
as hell. How it's linked so far into it, an amazing idea that, I did not see this coming.
And this is honestly what made me say, I think a couple episodes I said this, I don't know if it got cut or not, but the beginning of TCU to me feels a lot like Stranger Things. So you know how Stranger Things has that awesome opening scene where Will's getting chased by the thing? Sorry, spoiler alert for Stranger Things. And then he gets captured, and that sets the stage for the rest of the first season. I feel like this feels a lot like that, and I am super into it.
It's kind of like, for all of the other campaigns, we've read the intro story. In TCU, you read it and then you play it, right? You affect the intro story.
Yeah.
Which I really liked.
And it also has this cool kind of looping effect where you get a chance, because this mirror, we'll get to scenario 2 or 3, 2.5, I don't know. We'll get to the last scenario in the box, which is essentially kind of repeating the setting and some of the enemies. And it's cool that you get to face it kind of underpowered first, and then you come in again and
because you get to get scared of it.
Yep,
right.
It gets to scare the hell out of you first because So the one thing I thought was really cool is the resolution on the agenda. So the different things that can happen to the investigators. So you can either be taken by the Watcher if you get defeated by the Watcher. I'll be super interested to see what happens there. You can be claimed by specters if you were defeated by a monster's attack. If there's 7 or more doom in play when it advanced, so basically if you make it long enough, you disappear into the mist. And that is the one I'm keeping my eye very close on for the rest of the campaign, because that's badass as shit. And then the last one is you're pulled into the spectral realm. So yeah. Nick, you want to tell us about Act 1B?
Oh my god. Okay, so I was playing and it was after I was done. I was cleaning up and I was just like, there's always funny stuff on the backs of these cards that you'd never, like, there's no mechanical reason to flip them over. I'm like, what's on the back of here? And I flip it over and I see that wall of text. I'm like, oh, interesting. And I'm reading it. I'm like, this is foreboding. Okay. And at the very bottom, add your campaign guide that you're being hunted. I'm like, well, fucking A! Like, what the hell? And then
You thought you were safe, didn't you?
Yeah, my mind was reeling at, like, what, like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? Like, is there gonna be an encounter set later on that gets added because of this? Like, holy shit. And then I'm flipping through the campaign guide and I'm like, oh, there's this narrative text at the end. And it was really cool. Like, I really like that because it's very, like, breaking the fourth wall, that narrative text is. And I'm like, that's awesome. But then I'm like, I hope he goes further. Like, I hope there's a little bit more.
I hope it's like scenario 8, and it's like, check your campaign log. If you're being hunted, spawn this big bad enemy on you, like, at the start of the scenario.
And it's the stubborn detective.
Yes.
Coming after you after all this time.
Yeah. Draw a stubborn detective from your collection and draw it. But you know what I liked? I did the same thing, Nick, on my... Like, after I was finished the game...
sure I wasn't the only one.
Yeah. But, like, after I was finished the game, I was like, okay. I was like, oh, I wonder what's on the back. But this had me thinking of Carcosa, because this totally breaks the fourth wall again. Yep. Right? It's something I physically did, and now it's affecting the game, but not in a game way. Yeah, I loved it.
My experience was kind of the opposite, which is I got to the end of things and saw that text. I was like, hunted? How do you get hunted? And there's like 20 minutes of me looking through every card and campaign entry, like, where the heck does this come in? And finally I found it.
That's the best, though. I think that's so cool, like, when you're just playing a game and you're like, wait a minute, how does that happen?
So just looking at the resolutions here, I think we kind of covered the basics. Basically, you discovered, or X pieces of evidence were left behind, and however you got defeated matters, we assume. Mm-hmm. So moving to the witching hour, the first little bit you get is a fun little story piece where you kind of get to decide. It's like it's like that chapter at the beginning of the book where you're just like seeing something off screen, and I don't know. I've been playing a lot of video games where that sort of thing happens, where there's like background scenes happening and it's just all text. Mm-hmm. But you get to make an important decision here whether you accept or reject your fate. You guys just role playing it so far?
Yeah.
I was role playing it for a first little bit. Now, as much as reject fate is harder, I find, I also don't like having an additional weakness in my deck. Especially the tower.
I hate the tarot cards so much.
It's, oh my god, the tower is just so brutal.
It's ridiculously bad. And yeah, you get the Ace of Rods with it, but as we've discussed, we're all just kind of like, meh.
It does not equal out. Like, those cards are not on equal levels.
That was not a fair trade, Matt.
So, okay. What's so bad about the tower? Because I remember thinking, like, oh, that's not bad. And then I've even drawn it, and I'm like, oh, that's not bad. Like, okay, play it. Done.
Well, and I think different people are going to be hit differently by it. Different investigators are going to get hit differently by it. Mm-hmm. I've been playing a lot of investigators where I'm paying real close attention to my icons, and I tend to be drawing cards and committing cards a lot. And it's kind of brutal to have that dropped on you. Like, say you just played a card. You just went down to 1 or 0 resources, and then you pull this in upkeep, and it's like,
I see. I've played as Preston and Carolyn so far, and that's it. So I haven't been too worried about resources.
I've played as the 2 money bags investigators. I don't see a problem with this costing 4. So again, I play a lot on hard, and hard.
Oh, yeah.
You have to just chuck your hand half the time. Like, your cards are half skill cards all the time, and this just cripples you. Like, did you want to pass tests? Cool. No. And then you're like, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It reminds me
And it's
of...
not just skill cards, too. That's the thing.
It reminds me of the hidden cards from Carcosa, where you're just like, oh, that's not bad. I'll just hold on to it in my hand, and then you end up getting screwed by it later.
Yeah.
And then you don't have time to play it or resources, so... And just like, okay, I better play it as soon as possible, but it's gonna, like, slow down the pace of my deck so much.
Yeah, now that Streetwise is 8 XP.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
You had to commit cards.
So then, rejecting your fate, you get a couple of Elder Thing tokens, which in the first couple scenarios are pretty rough.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out, denying your fate, Universe doesn't like that so much. It's trying to Final Destination you with Chaos tokens. Okay, so getting to the scenario itself, this one's just lousy with witches.
Yep.
How'd you guys
Witches
like
everywhere.
the woods and location mechanic where the connections got a little weird?
I think it was a pretty cool way to represent being split up.
Yeah.
But in a solo game, it means nothing.
That's true. It is entirely a multiplayer mechanic.
There's a lot of things in the game when you play solo that get affected negatively, I think. Like like mechanics don't work the same way. So,
Casey in chat brings up Foundations of Stone, which is the Lord of the Rings scenario that did something similar. I've actually played that scenario.
I know.
And I remember I loved that. I loved that feeling.
Yeah, that's still one of my favorites.
Yeah,
it's such a
it was
good one.
really cool. This is kind of the inverse of that, because in that one, didn't you start together and then get split up and then have to find your way back? Mm-hmm. And this is you start split up and now you have to make your way to the center of the woods. I think this is really cool. But again, my primary experience with it has been solo, which has been just like, okay, set up. Okay, set it up like normal. Cool.
yeah. The setup also got changed in the FAQ, by the way. I'll mention that, throw that in. So now you just put out 5 locations, regardless of number of players. So if you're solo, you put out 5. Because there was a way, and it happened in solo and 2-player, and it was like low percentage chances. Like there was a 11% chance in solo and a 7% chance in 2-player.
you say
like
that.
Someone did the math.
And Sean found it.
Happened to me first time I played through. We sat there looking at the numbers for so long before I was like, I think we're just clue deficient.
So yeah, there's this one or two particular setups. If you just grab just the right locations, you can not advance. Period. There's just not enough clues. So now you just take 5 locations out, regardless of the number of players, and that's what's in front of the players.
Seems like a good fix.
Mm-hmm.
So, what about specific cards in this one? The witches I thought were interesting to tangle with. What do you guys think about the milling mechanic that the encounter deck witches are kind of doing, and it seems like they're doing in this campaign?
At first, I was like, that's fine. Go ahead. Get rid of your cards. And then by the end of the scenario, I was like, no, stop it! Stop it! Don't do it anymore!
Yeah, it hurt. Like, okay, so the Diabolic Voices one, where it's like test 3 willpower. For each point you fail by, discard a random card from your hand. And for each one you can't, you take a damage or a horror. And then, like, it gets more difficult the more Diabolic Voices are in there. It's like, I didn't pass it the first time. What's going to make you think I can pass it the second and third time when it's harder?
Some of the treacheries, this is something I've kind of hinted towards in past conversations, because I couldn't talk about it directly, but how much this scenario in particular, but this cycle has, with these certain treacheries, really taxes and tests willpower so much. Because I feel like, I haven't done any like card counting, but I feel like more than any other scenario, there are a lot of treacheries that go in your threat area and test willpower to get rid of them. And they are terrible. Like Bedeviled, you can't trigger action abilities on cards you control. Like the first time that hit my low willpower Joe Diamond solo, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, okay, I guess I can't use my weapon now. Guess I'll die.
You know what's better than a Bedeviled? A Bedeviled that hits you after you've been like hobbling around with a racked for a while.
Yeah.
And it's just like absolutely get fucked.
Yeah.
But I will say that I love the little caveat that most of those have, which is if there's an exhausted witch at your location, you automatically succeed this test. Like,
yeah, but in a post-Streetwise world, that's not as good.
you know what?
I was gonna say
you're right.
I was gonna say I call it the rogue caveat because they all have terrible willpower, but they can all evade. So it's like, sorry, rogues, we know you're bad. Here's an easy way out.
It was thanks to this clause that my Rita actually did pretty well at this scenario because she could just evade the things. But,
Oh yeah.
but yeah.
Also fun fact for you roguers out there, at least so far in the box, and I think it holds pretty true to the scenarios. I'm gonna have to double check it. Stealth, it's a thing in this campaign. Like,
Oh my god.
most of the enemies in this thing are 2 or less evade. It's great. Now that said, I don't think stealth actually exhausts them, so it's not going to help you deal with the willpower treacheries. But just wanted to point that out. I'm a big fan of how the different campaigns have their own metagame, and this one, I feel confident in saying that like the general aura of this one is probably one of the most distinct campaigns
Yeah.
that we've gotten so far.
And this is definitely the willpower cycle in my book, and yeah. It's like we were talking before about how strong solo Joe Diamond is, and he still is. He's done pretty well for me. But that was a shocker. Like, he's my blind campaign going into this scenario. And like, he has low willpower, so these things were just chaining on him. Then it's like, cool, I can evade to get rid of it. Like, he also sucks at evading, so it was rough. But yeah, he made it through. But it can be tough.
I absolutely love the design and the feeling of demonic piping.
Oh,
Like,
Yep.
it just comes out, and then it just sits there, and then it comes out, and it just sits there, and it's really scary. And I just feel like you're lost.
Matt
in
had
these
that
woods.
one ready. Love it.
That's an incredible gif of a guy playing a recorder.
Dude,
That's awesome.
magic. Oh, he's doing more than playing it.
Yeah, the demonic piping. Like, I just imagine walking through the woods, and all you hear is this like creepy, like pipe organ music mixed with like little flutes, but creepy pan flutes. And then the Piper of Azathoth comes out, and he's terrible.
The first thing that pops into my head every time it hits table is "doot doot magic flute," which is from a D&D meme. Anyway,
All right. Well, I suppose there's 2 ways to kind of end this one. You end up in the witch's circle with Annette. You can either parlay to put clues on her, or you can just start throwing fists. Do you guys find that one way is more usual than the other? Or I guess
more usual.
sorry, you do one more usually. I don't know where I was going with that. That sentence really got away from me.
Well, us roguers
More
tend
commonly,
Yeah.
Rogue Squadron. prefers.
The
Rude
Roguettes.
Squadron, please.
I think I've tended to kill her more often than parlay.
Because she's 4 per investigator, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm about 50-50. My Diana and Preston duo just ended up being ready to get clues faster than to fight down on a big enemy. I feel like she's very interesting. She's one of the first times I remember seeing this in Arkham. It's actually a pretty common element for bosses in Lord of the Rings. But she brings other enemies out of the encounter deck.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a bit of a thing.
It's painful.
In solo, that's a big problem. It's a big problem. Although, yes, Black Horror just said it in chat, and that's what I was going to lead to, is like, that's why I'm running Dynamite Blast in Carolyn.
Yeah. Well, and also you can pay for it.
And also you can pay for it, yeah. No, I think with enemies like this, whenever they give you the option to parlay them, I always try for that. Like, that's my goal. But then I usually, because of the investigators I play, I usually end up just blowing them away.
Yeah.
And the thing, too, is the enemies she's bringing out are terrible. Like, the Priestess of the Coven
Yeah.
is... Yeah. I hate them.
And it's like one or two, like one is fine, but once you get a bunch of them all in the same location, like if you get three, like two other witches and her, you're like, fuck this, dynamite.
We should all be so lucky. So wrapping up the scenario then, I think the main two resolutions are, let's see here. If you're defeated or... Yeah, it's basically if you parlay or if you beat her up.
Yeah, I think the only main difference is just which mementos you discover. Which presumably will be meaningful later.
Alright. Well, moving on to At Death's Doorstep, which as mentioned is kind of a... I don't want to call it a rehash. It's definitely revisiting at least of the setting from... Disappearance of the Twilight Estate, but it's kind of cool because then you get to go to the scene of the crime and check things out.
It's very deja vu
for the viewer.
Yeah.
So you put a bunch of clues out on the important locations. Despite the fact that the agenda does a really good job of warning you, like, hey, hint, hint, you might want to clear those locations. I did manage to lose my focus in one playthrough and regret it. So that one's cool. Now
I want to know what happened.
I think it was my blind play, so I just didn't know.
Oh yeah, okay, gotcha.
So I didn't know what happened. I knew that the game wanted me to do that, but I was like, no, I'm gonna go kill this enemy and get a clue over here. So the big one that I think this one has going for it is the start normal, go spectral, right? Like you dip into the upside down. If we're extending the Stranger Things metaphor.
I'm with you.
Yep.
So how do you guys feel about the first half? That one's pretty interesting, where you're just kind of schmoozing around and digging around in the corners while the party's going on.
Yeah,
it felt very thematic that way. I like that. I was like, oh yeah, I'm actually just schmoozing. This is neat.
Rita played billiards a lot.
Yeah, I really love the location effects that are... what is the one I'm trying to find? Oh, when you go looking for trouble, so you can discard until a silver twilight enemy is discarded. But all of the effects are kind of cool. That give you different ways to get clues.
It's also really nice that when it switches to spectral, like, you have an idea of kind of what to expect from the locations, which is good because then, like, the pace of the scenario ramps up so much. So, or wait, no, is that Agenda 3? I might be getting that mixed up.
That is, let's see here.
No, it's Agenda 2.
Yeah. Yep. I think it's Agenda 2.
Yeah, because between Agendas 1 and 2, you go do an interlude because why wouldn't you? Let's just go do an interlude. And then it goes spectral. How do you guys feel about the Watcher as kind of seems like it's set up as an antagonist, but there's a fair amount of mystery in which it's draped.
It's definitely a tough enemy in this small kind of map setting with like one choke point that I think I tend to think of a lot of scenarios in terms of how big the maps are and the choke points playing the Rogers. But what was I going to say? Oh, but I think the really cool aspect that kind of makes the Watcher more meaningful is the fact that these Silver Twilight guys get dangled out as kind of fodder for him. And how are you going to deal with that situation? Whether you're going to try to rescue them or use them as kind of a distraction. There's kind of different ways you can go with it.
I like that we're seeing persistent enemies, and when I say persistent, I mean across multiple scenarios in a campaign, that still feel unique. and they're not all just doing the same thing. So, like, you know, we had
The Harbinger of Volusia.
The Harbinger,
Snake Mama.
The Harbinger, and like Man in the Pallid Mask was a weakness, and like Ghoul Priest was like the first one where I think that's kind of like what I expected them to be like from then on, was the Ghoul Priest, where it's like if you didn't kill it, then it's just gonna. Whereas the Watcher's just like, if you
kill me.
It just lays down for a little bit, and then it's like, okay, I'm good.
And I'll
You're
become
like, damn it.
more possible than you. No, more powerful than you can possibly imagine. That's what the line
More
is.
possible than you can powerfully imagine.
Yes, that.
I like that.
I imagine him as like a dad on the couch. He's like, I'm not sleeping. I'm just resting my eyes. You know?
Jeez.
It's just gonna take a little lay down.
So I did like, though, that the scenario really has a turning point there, because the is it the... Oh, hang on, I'm looking at the scenario card. Is it the skull token that just gets worse if you're at a haunted location?
Yes.
See, I love little things like that where the game can get harder without having to like actually do anything to the board state. Although adding haunted to every location does something to the board
I would
state.
say it literally changes the entire board state, so...
All right, well, let's blow past that.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but...
It like sweeps the rug out from under you, and you stay standing.
That's
Like,
true.
Like,
Now on a shittier rug.
shittier, and it's kind of sticky and gross and dark.
So, who else here hates the Fate of Fools? Or Fate of All Fools?
Yes. Because the first time you're like, okay, and then later you're like, fuck me.
Yeah. I mean, when I say I hate it because it's just so destroyingly awesome. Like, it's just... God, I love the choices it gives you. Like, it's just a terrible choice. It's so well designed, but I hate it so much because it screws me over every time.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. I have yet to play TCU beyond 2 players. That's one I imagine that when you get into 4-player is just a nightmare.
Yeah.
How many copies are there? 3?
3, yeah.
Yep,
Oh.
3.
Rough.
It's in the same set as Terror in the Night, which is also awesome, where,
Yes.
you know, it stacks up next to the Agenda Act?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the two. Agenda. And it's just in play next to the Agenda deck. Like, it's not attached to it, so even if you advance, it doesn't matter. And it's like, when it pops, all investigators take 3 horror.
Yeah.
It's the encounter deck winding up a Falcon Punch.
Yeah, exactly.
That sent Preston insane one scenario. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. I like that design.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like there's a few in this that kind of make this cycle one of the most insane for multiplayer, like 3 or 4 player games, even more than previous cycles. Like, I feel like this Iron Man is going to be a little bit of a doozy, not in terms of raw difficulty, but in terms of like if the encounter decks like get their combos together, which they can in 3 or 4 player, it can be rough.
Yeah, and Matt's even making it harder, adding another scenario to the campaign with the prologue. He obviously just hates Iron Man.
Just more opportunities for us to fail.
Yeah.
He did it at the front this time instead of at the end, like with TFA.
Yeah.
I feel like with cards like Shapes in the Mist, which resolves each haunted ability on your location, and just investigating in general, like, I don't know about you guys, but I pay a lot of attention to which locations I end up my turn on, and which kind of haunted abilities I'm going to try to tangle with.
Yeah.
Nope, and I regret it.
I definitely did after drawing this card, yeah.
But yeah, so resolving this bad boy then, we've got the interlude which kind of updates you on where you're at with the mystery of the missing people. Getting out, though, the resolutions on this one and then how that ties into the next interlude, the Price of Progress. Like, I'm looking at the campaign guide right now, and there's so much bold that's like, if this, then if X, then Y, then go here, and 3, and... So I'm trying to puzzle through this in my own memory as well. If you get out, you meet up with Sandy, old Carl Sanford, and he offers you, as every good villain does, the opportunity to work with him.
Not always.
Oh yeah, that's right. Only if you've saved the cultists, right?
Yes.
There are fewer than
If you save Joseph,
Especially Joseph and
Yosef or X amount of
yeah.
other guys, I think.
right?
Which most of the time, I don't know how you guys have fallen. Most of the time I have saved, so I've made this choice with everyone except Rita. Rita had a very survivory run where I was basically using all the Silver Twilight people as bait. And just like getting that, like having them hunt to them and kill them, so I could do other stuff. And then I just plugged Yosef and killed him. So, but the rest of my campaigns, I made the choice, and I think it's really cool. You can, of course, you can refuse to join or join, but the fact you can lie about it is really cool. I love it.
That's my headcanon. That's like the true headcanon to me. But either way, I think it's really cool. I am super excited to see what your choices here make a difference in later scenarios, because obviously the Twilight Lodge is pretty wrapped up in what's going on here.
Safe bet.
You know what I like about the choices in this one? It reminds me a bit of Carcosa in the amount of choices, like in these interludes and stuff like that. But Carcosa felt, as much as it was an unreliable narrator, the decisions felt a little more concrete. Like I knew what I was deciding on. Like, I'm going to be scared of this warning, or that warning's bullshit. Or I'm going to burn down this house with a bunch of people in it, versus I'm not going to burn down a house and commit mass murder. Like, there's some of these choices where I'm like, I don't know what this does, and I'm not sure what to pick from like I don't know, like a power gaming, or it's not power gaming, but as someone who's trying to play outside the game. Right. I'm just like, oh, do I join? Do I not join? Do I lie about joining? Like, I have no idea what is good or bad. Like, what is this going to end up being? And I really like that.
Yeah, there should have been a follow-up page with a bunch of questions like, what are your health benefits? Like, what's vacation time like in Silver Twilight Lodge?
Do you match your 401k?
Yeah.
This is one that I think will be really interesting to revisit when we eventually get to the last couple scenarios in this campaign. Just because there are so many little twists and turns on the choices and conditions that you fulfill to get to this point. Like, I don't know. Just super interested to see where it goes.
Agreed.
Yeah. I really like the confusion it's giving me. I should say that as well. Like, that was my point. Like, I'm enjoying not being able to make the best choice just by reading what the choices are. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just unsure of what to do, and I love that feeling of insecurity.
All right. Well, the Circle Undone as a box, I have been extremely pleased with it. Player cards were fun. The investigators, I think, with the caveat, as long as you've followed the game meta up to this point, are really great. I think if we were to advise someone like, hey, you've got the core, what's the next campaign box you should get? Like, I feel like the investigators in this one kind of depend on you having a big card pool more than most.
Yeah.
I think that's fair, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think that that's a bad thing per se. Like, I see a lot of people asking either on Discord or the Facebook or whatever, oh, like, I just bought the core set, what should I buy? And most people are like, just buy it in order, right? Go Dunwich, go Carcosa. But going core set to TCU, I think, especially like someone like Preston, you'll probably have a terrible time. Joe Diamond's Hunch deck is going to be terrible.
Diana has barely any cancels.
Yeah, like it really does require a larger card pool. However, I love that we have these because I do have the card pool.
Yep.
Yeah. And the building options, like Joe Diamond has been one of my favorite investigators to build for a long time, or my favorite in a long time, just because of that Hunch deck. Like, that is so cool. Not
Build
to mention
2 decks.
And not to mention, you can change that deck in between scenarios, right? Like, it just says 10 insight cards, so you can like pack these niche insight cards that they're in the Hunch deck one game, they're not in the other, and depending on like what scenario you're playing, like I find Joe incredibly fun.
It's pretty sweet. How are you guys feeling about the difficulty overall of the box? Because I know
Of the box, I thought it was fine.
of the box.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, so would you rate it above or below? I mean, I know we've kind of already had this conversation. I think it's a step above Carcosa. I'm still not sure whether I think it's actually more difficult than TFA. I think TFA is just difficult in just kind of different, wild, and more uncontrollable ways that just make it feel harder than it might actually be. If that makes any sense.
I think it's, if I were rate, okay, so difficulty wise, TFA is like an 8 out of 10 difficulty, and Carcosa is like a 5. This is like a 5.5. Like it's, but it feels more like.
Oh, you think it's that far from TFA, huh?
Yeah, I don't think it's as hard as TFA. I think the explore mechanic in TFA just choked you so much for actions.
Yeah, that's
and
what's holding it there for me too.
And the difference, I think, between this and Carcosa as far as difficulty, Carcosa is kind of weird. Like that whole dinner party, like the Last King, is not a scenario you're expecting to play. Like it's very, very different. This feels a lot more Dunwich-y, where it's just like, sure, locations flip and stuff, but it's still very normal scenarios where there's a map and you go get clues and there's bad cards and you try to avoid them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's not quite as. I think I'm kind of rating it on the initial like gut punch level, which TFA is the highest. That I always just hit like, what in the hell is going on, and keep replaying Doom over and over again, trying to beat it. Most of my initial runs were fairly successful, although I didn't have the sense of like, oh, this is easy. It was more like, okay, I made it through, but these treacheries were like taxing the hell out of me along the way. When we get to the Mythos packs, it'll be a different conversation. We'll save that. But as far
particularly for one of them.
As far as the box itself, though, yeah, I don't think it's as hard as TFA, just on that initial like adjustment period of like, how am I going to deal with this?
Yeah, I'd agree.
Or are we just like, because we've played TFA so much that we've just honed ourselves like, okay, I'm going in blind. This is going to be like a very difficult scenario, so I'm going to bring my best deck and do all the best plays and all this stuff. And then we're like, okay, I made it through. And this is actually about the same difficulty. Like, have we been?
I'd like to think that I just always am gradually becoming a better player. I have to hold on to that dream. Maybe.
It's possible. Difficulty is such a tricky beast to pin down.
Yeah, especially with something like this where you're getting new investigators with the box too, and you're inclined to use those.
Well,
and different card pool.
And just even your favorite classes in your playstyle will have a big effect on it too. Like, as we've mentioned, there's a ton of willpower pressure here. If you're like, hey, let's have Agnes be my blind run, you're probably going to have a better time with that blind run than someone who's bringing Joe or Finn.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It is an interesting beast, and we'll have to keep an eye on it as we go through. I think, for me, I'll use your scale as a comparative, Scott. So if we've got TFA at an 8, I think TCU is at a 7. I think it's almost as hard, but I feel like it's hard in more controllable ways. I think is what I was going for when I blathered earlier.
Yeah, I think that's the difference. I felt more in control. It's still difficult, but it's a difficulty that I can affect. And a difficulty that I'm used to dealing with as well. I'm used to playing scenarios like this. It has a lot of familiar mechanics on how to complete a scenario, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
How about as a box experience? Like, where does it rate? Like, for me, this is probably my favorite deluxe box. Like...
Yep.
Looking at the scenarios involved with it and ignoring the fact that there's an extra scenario. You know what I mean? Like, just looking at the scenarios themselves, the campaign, like the start of the campaign, how it feels. I think this is just barely edging out Carcosa. And I think it's simply because of like the big interlude after Death's Doorstep and all the different choices in there and the narrative implications, the "you are hunted" on the back of the act card. It's just that kind of stuff. Carcosa had that. It had some of that stuff, but it was much more obscured. Whereas this,
But let me tell you the definition of insanity, though, Nick.
Whereas in TCU there are clear choices. They're very clear what you're choosing. You just don't know exactly how that's going to manifest. Whereas in Carcosa, where you're like, is conviction good? Is doubt good? What do they change? We don't know. You know what I mean? Like, they're both like, those are my two favorite boxes, but I think TCU just edges ahead of Carcosa just a little bit. It's also kind of hard to rate that because I know the whole Carcosa campaign now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love it. But yeah.
Yeah, this is a really good box as an experience, and it sucks that, and this is a very, very minor complaint because I think most people who listen to us are not going to have this issue. But like we said, where the investigators, you really want all the cards, so you have that big card pool for them. This would also be a great experience, like as one of your first or second expansions to play through the scenarios, but you're going to have a bad time without the card pool to go with it, to survive those scenarios. Because I think the mechanics and everything, it's a really fun box to play.
It's tough because Carcosa will have a special place in my heart forever. I think I might put TCU ahead of it. If not, they're even. And I think what really pushes it for me is that Death's Doorstep. I really like that scenario, the interaction with like trying to make it out of this house and the Silver Twilight people along the way.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm samesies with you guys. If this continues on its current trajectory, which, when we get to the first two Mythos packs, we might have to talk about.
We'll have some conversations. We'll have some talking to do.
Little did we know that its current trajectory was a dick punch.
I've only played those scenarios once, but I'm excited to revisit them and try them again and see if going into them with a little more knowledge changes anything.
Blind is way different.
That's true.
Oh my god, yeah.
That's true.
The 8th time you play.
Then Iron Man.
Yeah.
Which is often the last time I play it.
That's how you sunset a campaign right there.
Yep, let's put it out to pasture. All right, excellent. Well, I think, as you heard, TCU is a resounding success among us, at least. Very excited to see where the campaign goes. Guys, anything else to say before we wrap this episode up? I'm going to go ahead and assume that no one's going to argue for Tentacle Time at this time mark.
Watch Marble Olympics. That's it. Sorry, I did my Tentacle Time.
Sekiro is fun. That's mine.
Play Journeys in Middle-earth.
Yes.
Play Brook City.
Ooh, yeah. Okay, we'll expand on all of those next time. But for now...
That's a teaser.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us on episode 58 of Mythos Busters. We'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.